Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. Now, here are your hosts, John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. So tonight's guest is Travis Thomas, who is a team performance coach, improviser, author of a book, Live, Yes, And then he's a speaker. He's founder of the Live, Yes, And movement. And Brandon, the listeners may be like, why does he keep really overemphasizing Live, Yes, And it's because I made a little mistake. No mistake in the interview tonight.
Well, you're focused now.
Yes.
And you've got the live, yes, and I got to tell you though, all kidding aside, Travis was great. Your questions to him were fantastic. And I think the listeners are really going to enjoy it.
Well, first of all, I'm not the only one who's asking questions here. You ask really great questions too. So one of the things we learned tonight is the lessons that you are learning in improvisation classes can be applied to not just mental performance with athletes. It could be applies to leaders. It can be applied to creating winning cultures. I mean, before we started down this track with Travis, I'm like, I would not have thought, hey, I'm going to go, learn a bunch of stuff about improv, and that's going to be so applicable. But when you do start talking about it and you do start listening to him describing the things that he learns and what makes for a successful improv session, which, oh, by the way, our boy Brandon here, may or may not be an active member of an improv troupe after this show, after his audition tape that you will hear during the show.
That's true.
But I do think that all of those things you can easily see why they're applicable.
100%. I mean, the parallels, we talk about it, the parallels between, getting on a stage and the fright. I mean, and as athletes, because you have gotten in front of people before and you've played before. And a lot of times, depending upon how far you were able to go, you're going to play some games in hostile environments. Yeah. And as a leader, there are times that you are going to be in front of people speaking, trying to lead, and it could potentially be hostile. You have the potential of falling on your face, just like you would in comedy or on some sporting field. So, the parallels are there. And I'm like you, John, I would not have thought that until we had an opportunity to talk to Travis.
Right. And those hostile environments may or may not be some young punk kid wearing a fedora at a Georgia Tech baseball game back in the mid 90s.
Would that be the one that said, "Hey, John, y'all stink and you're not even playing, so you must really be bad"?
Yes. During my redshirt year, there may have been a time when I'm in sweats and the guy takes a shot. I catch a stray.
I do remember
sitting
you
in front of the dugout.
Some shrapnel on something that you absolutely had nothing to do with.
Right. Just being there. We were already getting waxed as it was. I think they gave away
pizza,
a lot of pizzas that day. The College of Charleston
meal plan at Georgia Tech back when they had
free
Nomar
pizza every time they scored a home run when Jay Payton and Nomar and Veritek. Yeah, not a bad lineup to be eating free food at the park if you're a Georgia Tech co-ed there. So
for sure.
But back to Travis and guys, this is somebody who's worked as a leadership and team dynamics coach for the U.S. men's national soccer team. He's currently, a mindset and culture coach. He works with Limitless Minds. Trevor Moad kind of was helped start that group. I mean, there's a lot of he surrounds himself with a lot of really good quality peak performance coaches, mental performance coaches, mindset coaches at Limitless Minds. He also has worked with, a few of these programs are pretty successful, huh? University of Georgia football, Boston Red Sox, the Chicago Cubs, Toronto Blue Jays. He's worked with some of the U17 U.S. national team, FC Dallas, currently working with FC Dallas, currently working with St. Louis University. And we talk about this in the show, but I want to make sure we call it out now as well. But he has a Yes and Mindset and Leadership virtual program that begins this June 6th, and spots are still available for all high school and college athletes. So go to @LiveYesAnd on Instagram, and you'll see a link in the bio for that. After this episode, if you aren't like rushing to go do that, there's something you weren't listening, or
I've already pulled it up, and we'll be registering after we get done. But he really is fantastic, very relatable, and just a ton of knowledge that you can. And we talked about this. He makes the difficult stuff seem easy to digest, and to then apply, right? And that has to be the thing. And I know our listeners hear this a lot, but the theories and the things that are being put out for us by these professionals, if you can implement them and then apply them, they make a huge difference. If you don't do anything with it, then it ends up just being theory. But he makes things seem like it's attainable to apply them in your daily life.
Absolutely. And guys, I am happy to announce that next week we have a legend coming back on the podcast. Somebody that, if you've been a longtime listener to the show, this name will be very familiar, but it is the return of Dr. Mo next week on the show. So we will have plenty to talk to him about, including, I think, Brandon, how does Scotty Scheffler have all that happened to him the day two, I guess, of the PGA, and then be able to go out there and do that. I imagine that's going to take some pretty good mental toughness to be able to get through 100%. Everything he experienced and then be able to do that. But we're going to get out of your way now, because you need to go get your pen and paper, because here is Travis Thomas. All right, well, there you heard in the introduction, we have Travis Thomas with us tonight. And Travis, we are really excited for this conversation. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us.
I really appreciate it, guys. Really happy to be here. And I wish I could say that I was busier than I am, but I'm not. So I guess you get me.
That's right. That's right.
So when you get the lulls, I'm like, enjoy them. Like when the phone's not ringing, I'm like, all right, I guess I got some more time to be with my family.
Yeah.
No, this is great. I really appreciate it. Really looking forward to be here.
No, absolutely. And, in the introduction, we talked a little bit about some of the things that you have done. One of the things that I think is a good place to start is, you are the former leadership and team dynamics coach for U.S. men's national soccer team, also a mindset and culture coach. Those are three topics, leadership, mindset, culture, that we're definitely going to talk about tonight on the show, or at least touch on, because while we have you, it would be crazy not to do that. But I wanted to start, before we get into anything, is to go back and learn a little bit more about you. You played soccer at Principia, so shout out to the Panthers, by the way, because that's the first Principia mention we've ever had on the show, Travis. That might surprise you or might not.
It's small but mighty. Small but mighty.
Beautiful campus, by the way. When I got on the website,
I was going to say, wow, you've been there. Actually, it's a
there's a little video. That's right. It is very, very nice campus. But I wanted to just kind of find out from you, like, if I'm correct, all of this started when you attended that first improv class in 1998. But I wanted to, before we even get to that, tell us a little bit about maybe what led you even to that point, the improv class there in 1998 from Principia.
Yeah. So, I grew up in Flint, Michigan, right? I grew up in, very much a small town, but an industrial General Motors town, and was really shaped and framed, by growing up in Flint. My dad had a hamburger business in Flint. And so we were really ingrained, into the community there. Flint was always known for producing two things: automobiles and professional athletes. It's gotten so small to the point now it has a hard time producing either. But in its heyday of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I think the per capita professional athletes that came out of Flint based on the population was pretty staggering. And I always knew I wasn't going to be one of them. But I did love sports, and enough to go to Principia.
Principia. My bad.
I really didn't want to correct you because it doesn't matter. To go to Principia, where I could play soccer at the Division III level. But I kind of had this sense my entire childhood that I just really wasn't, and this will kind of get into where we're going. I really just wasn't that mentally strong. I had I felt I carried some fear and anxiety, and I don't think I ever showed it. Maybe I showed it on the field with maybe a little bit of physical hesitancy, but I never felt like the other guys who didn't seem to deal with fear or the things that I did. So I always kind of felt incomplete as an athlete, being surrounded by so many other good athletes. And so, but I had no idea that as I got older, that was the field I was going to move into. But if I hadn't had that experience, I probably wouldn't have moved into this field. But no, I always loved comedy. Didn't do any theater, didn't do any comedy growing up. I mean, I was probably the most annoying person in my family. I don't know if that's the seeds for comedy. I was the youngest in the family of all my siblings and cousins. And so they got to see a lot of bad comedy over the years. But my wife and I, we got married right out of college. We moved to Boston. We were both just kind of, working sort of normal 9-to-5 jobs in Boston, and an improv theater in Boston had just opened called Improv Asylum. And I'm like, hey, let's go to a show. First weekend in town, we went to a show, and I was floored. I was blown away. And I was just like, man, I'd seen Second City in the past. And I was like, how do you do that? Right? It's like a foreign language, which I can't speak either. But Duolingo, I'm on day 330. But it's like, how do you do that? And so, I'm dumb and young enough to say, hey, do you guys have classes, training center? They're like, yeah, we have a 6-level training center. And, I was like, sign me up. I want to just experience it. Little did I know, I was in the first class ever of the theater. And I was hooked at level 1. And a year and a half later, I was graduating level 6, putting on a live performance as a group. That was your graduation, is putting on a live public show. And then that coincided with them having auditions for a touring company, and I auditioned and I somehow made it. And then over the next couple of years, I worked my way up to the main stage cast. Those actors that I revered in that first show, I was now one of them, and just had a blast doing it. And I was teaching in the training center, and I was just enamored and just having fun. It was just fun. I wasn't really trying to make a career out of improvisation. But I was, doing 3 or 4 shows a weekend, and it was just a lot of fun. So that's kind of the genesis of kind of sports were everything my whole life. And then, you get married, and we're in a whole new city, a new life. And now I've got this thing in my life that has just kind of given me a completely new perspective on everything. And I know we'll get into a little bit, but it really kind of changed my perspective on everything. And it was but at the end of the day, it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So there's so many parallels though between what you just described in sports and athletics, right? I mean, you have to practice, you have to train, you have to have the courage to actually get up there. I mean, you have the opportunity for failure in front of people that came to see you. Yeah. Now, if you're the road team, then they're coming to boo you anyway, right? But if
they're like, why are you here?
Yeah, exactly. But I can easily see where there's an appeal there to get done with the competitive side of sports and move to what is a competitive I would think, a fairly competitive way of performing. From a mental perspective, are there similarities? Like if you bomb on stage, do you feel like, is it the same feeling as if you didn't perform well on the field?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And there's so many great parallels between what it feels like before a show, in the show, compared to, being an athlete. I was never afraid I was going to get hurt, physically hurt performing, although I did hurt myself a few times, especially when you really, really, sell it. But the butterflies, the pressure, the nerves, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of shame, all of that is very real. But those are the things that actually makes the experience so rewarding, right? Is that feeling. It makes it important, right? It's like, we'll get a whole side stream later, I'm sure, but it's like, we spend so much time trying to remove the fear from a situation. It's like, don't remove the fear. Don't worry about the fear, right? Focus on what you're doing. Focus on the excitement. Focus on the joy. And yes, and you're going to fail miserably, and you need to fail miserably, right? It's just a requisite. You need to, because you're not going to know what a good scene is until you've done a dozen bad scenes. And you're not going to know what it feels like to do a good show until you've done a dozen bad shows. And you're not going to feel good about yourself and respect how difficult it is to be good if every time you get on stage, you just hit a home run. And it's just, I saw a quote this morning. I'm not sure what WNBA player it was, but the quote was, "Hard times create good times." And I'm just like, that's so simple.
Right.
It's so simple, but like, yeah, good times aren't good unless we had the hard times.
That's exactly
the hard
right.
times make the good times great.
Yeah.
And enjoy it while they're there. You guys know, enjoy the good times while they're there, because more hard times are coming. But once you're in the hard times, if you can appreciate that I can still find joy in the hard times, because I know the hard times are setting me up for better good times. It's very kind of cyclical. But no, so and I really loved how it made me feel like an athlete again. And then I really, really loved, because improvisation, it's collaborative. It is 100% collaborative. There is no, and the star of tonight's show is, no, it is a collective group effort. You're on a stage with another performer or a group of performers. No one of you is more important than the other one. And the only way it's going to work, if you recognize that and celebrate that, and operate under that improv mantra of, my goal is to make my partner look brilliant, and my partner's goal is to make me look brilliant.
I love it.
And anyone else that comes in, we're trying to make them look brilliant, and they're trying to make us look brilliant.
Well, and you're starting to tap into it, Travis. And so why don't we go there? Because, as we mentioned in the introduction, the title of your book is Live Yes And. It's the three words for getting unstuck is live, yes, and. But when I was preparing for this, I started, all the talk about improvisation and the parallels between that and, mental performance and a lot of the work you're doing now. And it made me think, okay, let me go back to improvisation just from a definition standpoint, because, it is created and performed spontaneously or without preparation. It's impromptu. And you recognize pretty early on that the principles for improvisation are the principles of life. So talk to us about that. Talk to us about that first moment when you're like, man, I know this is deeper. This has a little bit more reach than maybe anybody would have connected yet.
Yeah. Class 1, right? Class 1, where I went down there and thought I was funny. And like, and like the teacher that stopped the class numerous times, not just because of me, but, but stopped the class numerous times and said, stop trying to be funny. Stop quoting movies. Stop quoting comedians, right? When you try to be funny, you're not funny, right? Make a choice and find the truth in the choices, and just connect with the people that you're on stage with. Find the truth in the relationship of the person you're on stage with. And that's where the comedy comes from. And so the act of trying to be funny bombs the scene immediately. And when you make choices that are just respecting the scene and respecting the relationship you're creating with your scene partner in the moment, that's, there's a book, but it's the concept is called The Truth in Comedy. And it's the reason good comedy is so good is because we connect to the truth in it, right? Like watching someone slip on a railing and hit their their private parts, we all kind of cringe and like you get that laugh. It's like, oh, I know what that feels like. I can relate to that. I can connect to that. Putting your foot in your mouth and saying something stupid at an inappropriate time. Ooh, I can relate to that. I can connect to that. And so it's finding the truth in the comedy instead of, coming out on stage and tripping and trying to do a pratfall or reciting an Eddie Murphy. Like, no, that's when you're going to feel really, really, like you're bombing.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, right? Because we talk a good bit, Travis, about not focusing on that result, right?
It's exactly
it's the effort that you're putting into it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing, from that. And to your point, like, I think back at how many times does someone say, well, it's funny because it's true, right? I mean, it's that connection to your point that people tend to make on the comedy side. Does coaching an improv group or in comedy, does that also mirror coaching from an athletic standpoint or a corporate standpoint?
Yeah. If leaders, coaches, teachers, parents, spouses, if you really leaned into the principles of what a great improviser does, you're going to have amazing sports teams. You're going to have amazing marriages. You're going to have amazing corporate groups. Because at the nature of improvisation, because it's collaborative, it's all about the relationship. It's about building a strong relationship. And so that whole principle of yes and, I didn't create yes and, I just put the live in front of it because I felt like what I could bring to sort of the world is what does it look like to live these principles in your life, in your personal life, in your field of work. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of sports. So when the opportunities started to come for me to get back into sports and to bring, for the most part, kind of some unique niche wisdom, not a lot of, improvisers were banging down the doors of college and professional sports teams, and coaches were like, yeah, we need the clown to come in here and help our team. And so my sports background helped bring me a little bit of credibility. Obviously being at IMG Academy as a leadership coach and being able to be there gave me some credibility as well. And, but it was, let's make it like super simple, right? We know that the highest performing teams have the highest levels of psychological safety, right? I always just break psychological safety down into three things, right? Trust, respect, and value, right? So, and what is a team? A team is a series of relationships. And so a relationship is usually one person, or two people, and then a team is just a bigger group. Organization is just a series of teams within. So for both of you right now, like think of someone in your life that's really important to you and you have an awesome relationship with right now. Your relationship, you love this person and it's thriving. And just say, okay, are there high levels of trust, respect, and value between the two of you? Right. The obvious answer is yes. Yes. Now, think of someone in your life that you care about and love, but there is a hiccup in the relationship. It's not thriving like the way that you would want it to thrive. And is it missing an element of trust, respect, or value? Is one of those missing?
Yeah.
And the answer is probably yes. Right. So if you just kind of take that formula, and improvisers have to have that, it's got to be fully collaborative, or, the leg on the tripod is going to fall over. So if you bring that mindset to every sports team that you're on, to every corporate, work team that you're on, to the relationships that you're in. So I talk, when I'm talking to high level leaders, especially executive leaders who have such an opportunity to create change and have impact over groups of people, I often ask them, think about your behavior on a day-to-day basis. And is the way you show up with your team or organization, is it developing trust or is it decaying trust? Right? Are people afraid and nervous around you? Right? Do they feel threatened? Are they afraid to take a risk? Are they afraid to say something because you might chop their head off? Or do they know that you're just going to say what you want to say anyway, so it doesn't make any sense for them to say anything? And if for each of us, it's like, wow, like in my own family, my wife and my kids, my three kids are starting to get a little bit older now. The youngest one is 16. But if I'm on my soapbox too long, they're like, "Oh, hey guys, look out! Let the professor speak." And like, that's not a compliment. That's like, Dad, you need to shut up.
Oh,
They're
listen.
like, the professor is, "Ooh, Dad,"
Yeah.
and it's just like, and it stings. And then I'm like, I might not tell them out loud, but I'm like, okay, you're right, and we can. It's innocent. We can do that. We can do that in any of our relationships. And I'm like, oh, okay. Am I really leaning in and building that psychological safety?
And what I love about that, Travis, is when you are talking about this, and I've seen you break this down in some videos that you have on your website for some of the workshops that you do. It's getting people to understand that it's not a competition when you are working as a team. It's not a competition with the other person. It's when they understand, and you talk about that trust is that collaboration piece, right?
Yeah,
when my goal is to support you, my goal is to make you look good. My goal is to make sure that you're at your best. And if everybody on the team has the mindset that my goal is to make everybody else look better, it's like limitless, right?
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, think about it, man. It's like I said, man, this isn't rocket science because I wouldn't be teaching it, right? Like if this was complex, I'm not the guy you're bringing in. Yeah. But so what I try to do is I try to take the complex and make it simple because it is. Take the big and make it small. And to your point, John, it's like, hey, especially when I talk to like high school teams and athletes when they're just kind of in that mix of trying to figure out who am I as like a leader, as a person, as an athlete, and it's like, hey, I'll say, think of your favorite teammate you've ever played with, right? Think of your favorite teammate you've ever played with. Like, hey, I'm like, give me the qualities. What was it about them as a player, as a teammate that you really loved? And without fail, they'll give me 10 qualities before we ever get to, and they were really good. They get to, they were supportive. They were always positive. I had a great sense of humor, worked hard, always set the tone, all these things. And never one of them was, he's kind of an a-hole, but he scored all the goals. And so like, a good teammate to me. And it's like, okay, sometimes like, hey, in a results business, sometimes you need that guy because you're like, hey, we need you. I don't want to hang out with you, but we need you. But when you think about it from a common sense standpoint, it's like, oh, okay. How difficult is it to be that guy? How difficult is it to be the one who genuinely cares about the needs of your teammates? Like, how hard is that? How hard is it? And the term I've been using a lot recently, guys, is when we're all really kind of going through difficult situation, difficult times, you're just having a bad day or a bad situation. What do? We go internal,
right?
We go internal, and we just kind of we jump into our fondue of feelings, and we think poor me and victim mindset and poor me. And all we can't even see what's going on outside because it's just poor me. And so the term I've been using with people recently is like, just, can you flip the switch and go from internal to external? When things are bad, can you flip the switch and turn your focus externally and say, who's around me right now? What can I do to make them feel better? What can I do to add value? What can I do to just express gratitude? Wow, what an amazing day. What a beautiful sunset. Yeah, it's in my eyes, but it's beautiful. And wow, I can't believe that I get to play on this team. And I can't believe that I'm healthy. And I can't believe, what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and let that other player who hasn't played a minute this season, I'm going to go see how he or she is doing. And so when we go external, you and I know, we all know, as soon as we go external, we automatically feel better about ourselves. And there's a good chance our performance is going to shift as well. We're going to start playing better because now we're trying to make our teammate look brilliant. And who doesn't want to be around people that make other people around them better or even just feel better? That's what, coaches, right? Those kids are just gold nuggets. You're like, I need that kid in my locker room. But how often are we reinforcing that message? And it's like, that doesn't change. You want that person in your organization. You want that person at your family picnic, right? Those are the friends that you're going to choose to go on vacation with for the rest of your life. And it's just like, doing the simple things, which are really hard, but they don't require a ton of talent. It just requires intention. So be that guy, be that girl, right? Be that person that becomes invaluable because you just make people better.
That's awesome. Well, the great news for me is I get to do a podcast with that guy in my life. So,
how perfect is that?
I know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I hear something though, Travis, when you say that it is what yes and is in the improv world, right? I mean,
Yes.
exactly what you're doing is fostering. You are never turning something down. You are always going to play with it and then try to make it better and hand it back to them to, incorporate their touch. Is that?
That's exactly it. And so, if you just take it from the stage and the use of improv on stage, excuse me, because you're creating something on the spot that's never been done before, right? So, people laugh when they'd be like, "Where are you going tonight?" I'm going to improv class. They're like, "How do you rehearse improv?" And it's like, yeah, there's a ton of preparation that goes into being able to stand on a stage and go, all right, it's just time to yes and so it's these principles, it's those improv principles that allow you to take nothing and then turn it into something. And so yes and is that ground floor where everything stops or ends improvisationally. And yes just essentially means well, I mean, we can demonstrate it real quick. Do one of you guys want to demonstrate it?
Brandon's great at this stuff.
Oh, thanks, John.
Awesome. Brandon, perfect. It's always great when you're volunteering. It's all right. I'm going to make John sing
good
in the next activity. So it's good.
Outstanding. Episode 2 with Travis Thomas. John Cullen better have his damn tap shoes ready.
That's right.
Right. All right. So Brandon, you and I, we're just going to pretend that we're going to do some cool activity this weekend. We're going to reconnect. It's been a while. We haven't seen each other. We've got a cool weekend planned, and we're just going to let everyone know what we're doing. And the way we're going to do it is, Brandon, I'll start it off. I'll say something to you, and you're going to, whatever I say to you, you're going to respond first with yes and.
Okay.
Right. So whatever I say to you, you're going to say yes and. You're just going to build off of whatever idea I gave you, which is going to give me an idea back. And I'm going to yes and to your idea, which is going to give you another idea, and you're going to yes and give me an idea back. And so we're just building one yes and at a time.
Yes and.
Yep. So we don't say no, and we don't ask questions, right? Because it's an improvised scene. Asking questions means that you think your partner knows more than you do, and you're making it up on the spot. So there's no reason to ask a question. That's just being a coward. So no question asking.
Perfect.
All right, Brandon, here we go. Man, Brandon, I am so pumped. I am so excited about the road trip you and I are taking this weekend.
Yes, and I cannot believe that we get to stop at every Buc-ee's on the way.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I heard that you befriended one of the managers in Nashville, and he's going to hook us up with free slushies.
Yes, and free brisket sandwiches.
Yes. Yes, and I heard they've got Impossible brisket as well, because you knew that I was a vegetarian, of course. And while we're there, John's going to sing karaoke.
Yes, and I heard he loves to sing REO Speedwagon.
Yes. Oh, he loves the wagon. He loves the wagon. In fact, I believe he was discovered recently at an open mic night to fill in as the backup singer when they're on tour.
Yes, and he's also the backup singer for Kansas.
Yes. Yes, it's just he is so multi-talented. You know, I heard that he dropped out of school in elementary, and all he did is sit in his parents' room all day and listen to the old classics.
Yes, and he's still got a baseball scholarship, which is amazing.
Yes, and he would use the little, what are the little records, right? The little tiny ones, right?
Yeah.
His dad would throw those at him, and he got so good at hitting a skinny fastball.
Yes, and his dad had a hell of an arm. I mean, he could really sling it.
Yes, and apparently he hit him so many times in his head that he just shaved his hair off because he got so tired of picking the blood out of his scalp.
Yes, and those bumps on his head and probably the trauma is the reason that he's a friend of mine.
Yes, and make sure you talk slowly, because I noticed that he gets a little lost during his interviews.
Yes.
I will end it right, since we're just playing John.
Well, if he's got to volunteer me, it's open season.
See, John, that's what happens.
I was sitting here. I was trying, for the listeners who can't see me, I was laughing, but I was trying to not interrupt with my laughter because, and Travis, let me tell you something. And while I'm on this subject, if you guys get a chance and you can bring Travis, if you're some organization, you could bring him in to do a workshop or something like that, jump on it with both feet. Because I'm telling you, I watched so many clips today and was just having a ball laughing, but it's the learnings that you're getting from those things through all of the other things. But what I really love about that, Travis, is in that exercise, and I'm so glad you did that. And Brandon, I thought, killed it. I mean, if you
great job. Yes, Brandon.
If you're looking for somebody, he's
yes,
available.
and I'm available.
All right, here we go.
So, but you can't anticipate, right? You can't, like, this is the problem, is a lot of people, when they're doing improvisation, they think, oh, I'm gonna, like, I know where this is going, let me anticipate, and I'm gonna lead Travis this way, and then I'm gonna lead him this way. But the beauty of it and why it works so well with mental performance is if you start doing that and getting too futuristic in your thoughts, that person is going to give you something you didn't anticipate. And now what? Because so that's what I love, is it's being in the present moment where you now have to respond in the moment and not get too far ahead of yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, John. And, you know, again, when I got into improv, I wasn't thinking about really the mental performance piece of it. I think that the first sort of bell that I got hit with was how deeply relational improvisation was, right? Just the relationship side of things. If I really treated all my relationships, you know, from a yes and mindset, how healthy those relationships would be. You know, as I moved into the leadership and the mental performance space and was always trying to find new ways to bring these improv games into the classroom or onto the stage to demonstrate ideas, it really hit me. You know, at one point, especially when I was working more and more with athletes, I was like, wow, like, I'm like, okay, I'll do meditation. I love doing breathing activities. You know, I love mindfulness, all the mindfulness activities. I am never more present than when I'm improvising. And the reason I have to be that present is because to your point, I can't get ahead of myself at all. Right? Anticipation is great until you're wrong. Right. And so all I can do and all I need to do is just listen to the new idea. What did Brandon just say to me? That is my new reality. I thought he was going this way, but he's not. He went this way. That's my new reality. I need to yes and that. And what is sports? Right? Sports is, right? Choose your sport, pick your sport, whatever it is. Like if we're any ball sport, every time that ball moves, you've just created a new reality. Right? You thought the play was going this way. The play's now going this way. Are you going to argue about the fact that the play was supposed to go that way? Or are you immediately improvising in the moment? You're pivoting and you're yes-anding your new reality. Right? So our ability to be fully engaged in the moment, and, you know, like we talked about, right? It's all about process. It's not about the results. Results take care of themselves when we focus on the process. And what is the process? The process is staying in the present moment and being focused on the most important thing about the present moment, which is probably 2 or 3 behaviors or actions that are going to allow me to do this successfully, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. So it becomes a muscle. It just becomes another way to exercise our muscle to embrace whatever our new reality is. And then you just take that off the field, you take it out of sports, and you just take it into your personal life, which is all of life is an improvisation. And we're not in control of anything except how we respond to what is happening to us, right? I cannot control 100% of what happens to me, and I control 100% of how I respond. Right? Your power is in your response. It's not in trying to control. And so what is preparation? Preparation is I'm going to train and prepare and create the habits and the behaviors that I know are going to put me in the best possible position day in and day out. And then when it's game time or whatever happens to me during my day, I know that I'm going to, have radical acceptance with reality by saying yes and dealing with what is instead of dealing with what I wish it was.
Yeah.
And it's really, really, really hard to do. But improv continues to teach me and to give me the opportunity to do that more often.
But if you do that relationally, to where you are constantly an active listener, and you're not worried about what you're going to say, and you're not worried about being right.
Yeah.
You just are worried about making sure you hear the person sitting across from you so that you can be engaged with them. You want to talk about leadership.
Yeah,
man, that is servant leadership to its finest.
100%.
Right.
100.
I mean, it's awesome. I love that.
And if you, I was just talking to a friend the other day who he just attended a talk with another improviser in a corporate space. And he's like, Travis, you would love this guy. This is what he said. Cause you know, it's like, I always have to explain, usually in a corporate setting, yes, and in real life, in dealing with others, it's not a literal, right? It doesn't become a literal thing, right? When my kids come to me and say, hey, Dad, let's go to Disney World, you have to say yes, and, right? No, right? Well, although my daughter did say, she's 22 now, and she was 14. She came to me one day and said, hey, Dad, for someone who teaches yes, and, you sure like to say no. I'm like, that's a good one. You got me there. All right. What do you need?
Yeah.
$20? So what this speaker said in his talk, and my friend heard it, he said, in the real world, the yes and, it's not about the actual saying of the yes and. Does the person walk away from your interaction feeling like you were trying to yes and them?
Yeah.
Not whether you can or not, but do they feel that psychological safety, that trust, respect, and value as a result of your interaction? You know, it's less of, you know, you guys know that, right? It's coaching, parenting, all that. It's less about what happens, and it's more about how you showed up and dealt with the relationship, or dealt with the person, or dealt with the challenge. That's what they're going to walk away feeling. And the feeling is so much more important than the decision that's made.
100%. So, are you open to what they are personally invested in?
That's, yeah. Open is a great word, right? It's empathy, right? Active listening taps us into empathy. Empathy is, it's not about you understanding me. It's about me understanding you. And I'm not here, like, true active empathic listening this is not about me convincing you to agree with me. This is about me making sure I understand what this means to you. And then from that standpoint, can we start to yes and one another?
Mm-hmm.
So Travis, how do you break through? Because as I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the fact that, you know, right now with today's athletes, right? So, you know, we know about the NIL, and we know about the, you know, transfer portals. We know about what I perceive when you watch social media and you see some of the things that are going on is a lot of me first athletes. You know, it's a lot of like, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing, or whatever, because I love everything you're saying. And I'm thinking to myself, how challenging it must be for you who's working with some of these, you know, whether it's the Cubs, whether it's the U.S. men's national soccer team, whatever it is. But when you start to get some of these higher levels, and now all of a sudden you've got, like, you know, in professional baseball, for example, you have agents, you have other people who are saying, hey, it's, you know, I love all that. It's about us together mentality. But at the end of the day, you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself and making sure that you're performing and all that. I mean, I imagine that's a pretty big challenge for you when you go into some of these clubs and you go in and work with some of these teams. And it's like, hey guys, I understand we all want to do well from an individual perspective here, but when you all figure out that secret sauce is that you all working together, what's that like?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. You know, it's like, if I try to go into an environment, professional sports, college sports, corporate environments that are high pressure, high stakes, high outcomes, right? And if you try to minimize the fact that their livelihood is based on results and outcomes, right? They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to hear you. If I try to come in with this Pollyanna, right? Let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. They're not going to hear that. So it's about, if you want to look at it from a yes and standpoint, right? It's like, it's coming in, and the yes aspect is all of those things that you said, John, are true. Right? All of them are true. Every person in that locker room at the end of the day, right? And it's never been any different. It's just heightened. At the end of the day, each one of us, and we need to be this way, each one of us is most concerned with our success and our safety. I mean, duh, right? We have to be.
Right.
So, our starting point is like, yeah, of course I'm concerned about my NIL deal. Of course I'm concerned about my playing time. Of course. It's like, yes, all of those things are true. I'm not going to try to tell you that you shouldn't care about that stuff. Of course you should care about it. And if you want to increase your level of success, and we want to increase the level of success for this team, and you want to heighten your ability, are you going to achieve it by trying to sabotage everyone around you? Or are you going to do it by us in this room creating such a tight bond where we're helping each of us get as far and as high up the mountain as we can?
Yeah.
And the reality is that it's not an equal pie for everybody, right? And so, so you do have to, man, this stuff is not, it's not easy. And again, it's not simple, but each of us, we're all human. It's like we can all tap into, and I think we want to tap into how much better we feel when we're doing something with genuine relationships and genuine teammates, and how good that feels to have allies instead of enemies. And right. And so if we can just get guys to tap into like, hey, I get it. You two are competing with one another for playing time. Of course you guys are going to be like, going at each other. What if you guys came in every day? Because you guys like each other enough, right? Yeah, we like each other enough. What if you guys came in every day and said, hey, listen, hey, Brandon, you go up to John and you're like, hey, John, man, I'm going to try to kick your butt up and down the field today at training. Yeah. And you're like, hey, John, I kind of need you to do the same to me. Like, bring it, man. Talk your smack. Bring it. Mm-hmm. See you on the field. And then after training, right, you can go talk your smack. Yeah, I got you. I told you I could get you. I got you. Or no, like, oh yeah, you're talking about again. And then you give each other like a hug or a high five, and you're like, thank you. Tomorrow, let's do it again. Because am I making you better, and are you making me better?
Yeah.
Because if I think, yeah. And so if we can, because we know if I go in the weight room and I don't increase the weight, I'm not going to get stronger. So my weight room mentality has to be, I need to look around and go, all these guys in here that kind of feel like they're against me, they're weights. And I need them resisting, giving me resistance to make me stronger. And which means I need to resist back to them. Because at the end of the day, remember, everything else is outside of my control. What do I control? I control my attitude. I control my effort. I control my response.
Yep.
I can be amazing and coach is going to pick the other guy. I can be amazing and get injured. I can be amazing and the GM likes that guy because he's married to someone's, right? All the uncontrollables. So just control what you can control, which is I want to maximize my ability. And what's the best way to maximize my ability? By surrounding myself with people that are trying to make me better and help me get better. And I'm also helping them get better. And at the end of the day, all the uncontrollables will take care of themselves. And odds are, maybe I don't reach all the goals that I set out for, but I probably have put myself in the best possible position to be as successful as I can. And that's all we can ask for, right? That's it. That's all we can ask for.
Well, and what I love and what I hope
and we feel good about it. We feel good about it because we were a good person in the process.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. and look, I love the delivery of that too, Travis, because, and I want those that are listening, we have a lot of coaches, a lot of parents, a lot of leaders that listen to the show. I want them to understand is there was nothing about that was you coming in telling people this is how you used questions effectively. Like that's such an effective coaching, I think, approach is to ask the questions, get them to figure it out. You didn't come in and say, hey guys, you need to do this because that's going to make us all better. It was like, what would be the benefit? What do you think this would be beneficial if you did it this way? Do you think you could do this? And I kind of was thinking about when you were talking about pushing each other, there was a great Kobe story recently I saw, where, he went up and was talking to the general manager or somebody and was like going off on everybody in practice, and people perceived that it was one of his teammates actually was telling the story. And they said, look, everybody saw the video and was like, oh man, there's Kobe. I can't believe he's being so hard on everybody. It was like, no, he was saying he wants us to push him. He wants the fact that we weren't pushing each other was causing us not to, we weren't going in the right direction to be successful. And I think that's one of the things that, I hear you saying there is like how important it is to create that culture where everybody is starting to push, on each other. So talk to me a little bit about this, because one of my fascinations, and Brandon's as well, is culture. And when I start thinking about just number one, what a cool title you had with Team USA as far as the whole team dynamics and culture build. I was like, man alive, that's like, I want to put that on my, maybe I'll put it on my LinkedIn profile or something like that. But talk to me a little bit about that culture piece and, what's it mean to have that yes and culture? We started to talk about some of that, reinforcing the purpose and values. But when you're working with a team like U.S. men's team or the Cubs, are you there to change the culture of the program, or do you kind of come into those situations and see where it's at and then shape it a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's going to be different based on the situation. Yeah. With the U.S. men's team, Greg Berhalter, who's the head coach, in a whole other podcast episode, which is crazy. I sent him my book Cold, my book, 3 Words for Getting Unstuck, Olivia saying on Amazon right now. So I sent him my book Cold and he actually got it. And, nice. And yeah, it never happens. A cold send nothing ever happens. Now, granted, I had worked with a few of the players at IMG Academy when they were like U17s.
Yeah.
So I had, that's
little cred, little street cred.
I had a little bit of street cred. But he read the book and we met up, and he had been on the job for a year. He kind of gave me the vision of, this is the culture this is how I've created the culture up until now. This is the kind of culture I'm trying to create. Very intentional culture. And he said, I like where you're coming at from a leadership standpoint, mental skills standpoint, and the culture standpoint. He goes, there's a number of things I can see you doing on the staff around messaging and around working with the players collectively, one-on-one, doing these things. But at the end of the day, what it came down to was, I need someone who on a day-to-day basis is only thinking about the culture, or always, in addition to, but culture first, right? You're looking at our values, you're looking at our purpose. And it's like, how can we live it bigger? How can we live it more authentically, more intentionally? And so that's really, it was like, I think about, he gave me a torch. He gave me the culture torch. And I felt like, all right, it is my job, not to be in charge of the culture, but to be the person who's carrying the torch for the culture, and is just constantly observing everything, everyone and everything, and just being someone that's going to him constantly and saying, hey, Greg, here's a thought. Hey, Greg, here's an idea. Or him coming to me and saying, hey, Travis, what do you think about this? Or what do you notice with this? What can we do here? And so, he came up with the title Leadership and Team Dynamics Coach. He's like, let's not put mental skills in there, right? Mental skills. And by the way, I'm not a sports psychologist. I teach mental skills and leadership skills, but I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. And so he's like, let's stay away from the mental skills thing. And he's like, what about leadership and team dynamics? I'm like, works for me. And we were off and running.
Still start tomorrow, right?
We were off and running for 3 years. So, but right now I'm doing some work with FC Dallas.
Yeah.
St. Louis University. This will be my 4th year working with them. Different organizations have different levels of. St. Louis University is a rich soccer history for college soccer. We're going back, 70 years deep. And so there's a history, there's a culture to tap into. In professional sports, as you guys know, a lot of times new coach, they come in and it's a lot of times you're doing a culture reboot. And so with Dallas, it's like you're trying to honor the history, but you're also trying to find that authentic culture that is true to the group that you have, and not trying to make it complicated, right? Less concerned about what's on the wall and more concerned with how those behaviors show up on a day-to-day basis. And that's really what it is. That's what it comes down to.
Isn't it? I mean, I really think that's you hit on something there, Travis, because I think in some of the opportunities I've had to work with different programs, I always tell them when they start to talk about culture and building those principles, those foundational things that they're going to use, is don't go overboard. You can't have players thinking about 4 or 5 different things that are representing. I think of Coastal Carolina, and I know the listeners heard me say this before, but when Gary Gilmore in Coastal Carolina won the College World Series, I think it was back in like 14, somewhere in there. They had selfless and relentless. That was their 2 guiding foundational principles for their organization. And that's easy for players to grasp onto. And I love the thing that you said. And one of the ways, and you have to do this, if you're trying to develop that culture, you got to find ways to recognize people who are embracing it, finding people who are living it on a daily basis. Yeah. And they had in their clubhouse a carpet that had selfless and relentless stitched into it. Yeah. And when somebody would do something that represented either one of those 2, characteristics, or principles, they would bring that player in and reward them. And I think about your role with USA, the men's national team is, and I was thinking, like, I know there's people listening to this thinking, well, I wish I had a Travis Thomas in my organization that could do that on a daily basis.
I'm available.
I was going to say, call. His number will be at the end of this show.
Brandon and I, we're coming in.
Yes, and I'm coming along with him.
Go.
That's right. But it's like, you can find that person, like assign somebody. If you have a team of 8 people, just tell one person, hey, I want your role to be for the next quarter is to keep us honest. This is our culture. This is our mission. This is everything that we're doing. Like, if you see us steering or veering away from that, please make that known to people. Right.
Yeah. No, I love that. And, usually, with a lot of the leadership talks that I give, one of these, I usually kind of do a really odd activity right out of the gate. Maybe you've seen it in a video, John. I don't know. But all I'm doing at the beginning of my talk is I'm giving the leaders in the room an opportunity to be leaders, and most of them stay seated.
Yep.
And so the number one law of leadership is you better model it.
Yep.
You better model what you're asking your people to do, whether that's organizationally, whether that's in sports, whether that's in the classroom, whether that's in a marriage.
Yeah.
Right. Don't tell your wife about being faithful if you're not, right? Don't tell your team about staying calm and composed when you're losing your mind on the sidelines. And don't talk about sportsmanship when you're talking trash about the referee or whatever. Like, do you model the behavior that you're asking of the people that you lead? If the answer is no, your culture is going to mean, the culture is going to reflect it, but it's definitely not going to reflect the culture that you think you want. Mm-hmm. And so, leadership is, for the most part, we know, is a mirror. And whatever you're putting out there, that's the mirror that's going to be reflected back to you. And so then the question with culture just becomes, like, most organizations, they find that compelling purpose, which is awesome. They come up with an inspiring vision or goal, championship, whatever. Yeah, awesome. Come up with our core values, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Yes. I love it. Selfless and relentless.
Yeah.
And then they stop. And then the most important thing is the next step, which is, how do we turn, for example, selfless and relentless into everything that we do? Yeah. And that's like, how was our training today reflective of selfless and relentless? Are we talking about it at training? Are we asking guys to talk about, hey, who showed up selfless today at training? Hey, who was relentless at training today? Clearly, Coastal Carolina, they were doing that, right? Yeah. Are we talking about it enough? And are we making sure that we're modeling it in our behavior? Am I talking to you about being a relentless player? And I'm like, looking like I just showed up to training, right, with a hangover, right? How are we modeling these behavior? Because it's going to come down to how we turn the values, which are abstract, into practical, which are the actions and the behaviors. And then the consistency of that day in and day out, day in and day out. And now you're going to have a culture. You're going to have a culture that reflects what you want. So when you have someone in your culture that does not reflect that, they're going to stick out like a sore thumb.
We hear that so much about theory versus application, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody has this theory, leaders know that they should model, but they very rarely apply what they've learned. Right. And again, I don't care if it's sports, corporate, or comedy, you have to apply the stuff that you're practicing and learning about.
Yeah.
If you have an opportunity to have Travis come talk to you, you need to absolutely jump on it. And then you need to apply the things that he's talking about. That's the trick, right? Is the application piece.
Well, speaking of the jumping piece, Travis, if I'm not mistaken, the exercise you're talking about is literally go jump on the jump rope.
Imaginary jump rope, John.
Right. That's
right. Yeah. Because once everyone's sitting there going, I'm not going up there to look like an idiot. I'm not going to go look stupid.
Well, and I love
stay here where it's safe with everyone else.
Warm.
It's so funny because if you get a chance to see this online, he literally is looking around and he's thinking, hey, now's the time. If you want to come up, you should come up. But no, it's so true. I mean, I think it's a good, and to that point about bringing Travis in, there's other things you've done. I mean, you could bring him in as a keynote speaker. I feel like now we're Travis's infomercial. He's gonna record this.
I love it. I'm just gonna sit back. You guys go. No.
Hey, listen, we have a lot of infomercial expertise. We grew up in the Tony Little.
Oh, gosh, here we go.
Right?
Yeah.
So, if you act now, act fast.
Right. Act now.
Come on.
That's right.
For $19.99, not only will you get the stationary stair stepper,
yes,
we'll also throw in a free salad spinner.
Yes, and Travis will come read you a bedtime story.
That's right.
Tuck you in. But
and it'll be a Stephen King novel.
There you go.
So Travis, you did a keynote speak. I know you've done a bunch of these, but I mean, one in particular that caught my eye was the secret sauce of elite mindsets. And I couldn't help but write this down as something I wanted to ask you because you've been around so many elite athletes, right? When I hear Travis Thomas say, hey, here's the secret sauce of elite mindsets, I'm going to listen. So what is the secret sauce? So what can you share with the listeners is
man, that's a great title. I should probably remember what I say in this talk.
Right, exactly. I was thinking about that. I do that. I'll pull some deep cut for somebody and they're like, oh, that was
listen,
like
John
20
knows
years
the
ago.
B-sides. That's why REO Speedwagon is going to have them out there singing.
I'm going to start, and John's like, nope, that's not what you said.
If it's in fairness, I don't know the answer. I'm legitimately asking. I normally do know the answer.
Yeah. I can at least make it up. I'm an improviser.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, and Travis. Yes, and is the
yes. The secret sauce. Well, of course. What I mean by that. Yes. So if we were to will it down into a few core values that again don't sound or feel really sexy on the surface, are simple but not easy, and most importantly, when done consistently, right? If it just really becomes the aspect of who you are, and so the secret sauce, a few of those core ideas would be secret sauce being, if you can recognize on the front end, right, what you control and what you don't control, so not to waste time and energy trying to control the uncontrollable. Right. So if I'm like, okay, if I make my world really small and my small world is my attitude, my effort, and how I respond to what's happening to me, and I put all my time and energy into that, I'm going to be off to a good start. Secondly, if I recognize that collaborating is always going to get me farther than competing with everybody, right? Having that collaboration mindset compared to a competition mindset, right? And again, people think like, oh, that just means you're a pushover. No. Collaborating, like we've talked about, it's going out and that's where the relationship comes in. It's like, hey, get the buy-in from the others around you. I would love to know how many world records have been set, especially in track and field and those different events, by athletes who were friends with each other off the track and would train with each other and then try to kill each other on the track, where that extra motivation to push one another. I've heard some amazing stories, and I'm sure there's been a ton of them. And so that the collaboration over competition mindset. And the last one I would say is consistency.
Yeah.
right? Is just how important consistency is. It's like, you know, I always try to tell players, listen, as a coach, they're not looking for the player who's great every once in a while. They're looking for the player that's really good day in and day out. Because what are they looking for? They're looking for trust.
Yeah.
And so be the person in the locker room that they can trust. Be the person on the field that they can trust. Why? Because you're showing up every day consistently being the best version of who you are, right? And if you're showing up in that collaboration mindset, you're already making the people around you better, right? And you're not getting bogged down with all of the uncertainty of everything that's going on around you that's outside of your control, because you're focusing on, right, those few things that you actually can control, right? And if we can take that in out of the locker room, in the locker room, just like, hey, you know, we've all heard the expression, keep the main thing. Right. If we just kind of stay in those small lanes, there's not much that we're going to be confronted with professionally or personally that we're not going to be able to handle.
Yeah. You can follow Travis on Instagram, on Twitter. All of the platforms are at Live and Yes.
At Live Yes and.
Yes and. What did I say?
So
and
at
yes.
So
I said it
Live,
backwards. Sorry.
Yes and. That's okay. No, it can be and yes.
You're just going to find a whole nother person, though. It might not be Travis.
Yeah, like God, they're gonna bring that guy in. Thanks.
We'll
a lot,
get it
John.
Right. Hey, follow it on the show notes. We'll get it right on the show notes.
At livenobut.com. My arch nemesis out there who's killing it.
That's Justin Thomas's.
Yeah, that's right. Justin Thomas is he's killing it. But you posted something recently I really loved. Is the idea around paying attention. I thought it was so great that whole attention. I talk about those as behavior recipes. Like, what are the 2 or 3 things that you're going to, that'll give you the best chance for success, and that becomes your thought keys for whatever the case may be. But that idea around paying attention, and attention has value to it. Would you just maybe speak a minute about that?
Yeah, this kind of, again, getting back to like, why was I attracted to improv? Because like I'm a cheeseball at heart, and so like anytime I can find a fun wordplay or do anything that's like wordplay, I always get excited about it, and I usually throw my camera up and record it and move on. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, that's something there. Just record it and post it. But no, it's just like it hit me recently. We've all grown up and we've been told our whole lives, like, pay attention. Like, why have you been told pay attention? Where does the pay come from? Like, hey, pay attention right now, pay attention. And it's like, oh, why do we associate like a denomination? Like it costs. Your attention costs something, right? And it's like what's the whole thing on social media? If the social media that you consume is free, it's not free. You are the product on social media, because you have to sit through advertisements before that video starts, or every 5 or 6 things that pop up in your feed is going to be an advertisement. It's free, but no, you're the actual product. You're paying for it. Your attention is being forced to consume something. So you're paying for it, whether you like it or not. So as we go through our day, just if we can be really clear on, what am I paying my attention to? What am I giving my attention to? Because it has a cost, and we know that it has a price. So if my attention is constantly going to all the negative things in my life, I'm going to pay a price for that, right? If my attention is constantly going to all the things in my life that help me be a better person, that are effective, that bring me joy, that help other people, well, there's going to be a price and a cost that comes with that as well. And so there is really no such thing. I work with Limitless Minds. I'm a coach with Limitless Minds. And
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
We're all about neutral thinking, right?
Yeah.
It's all about neutral thinking. When it comes to our attention, there's really nothing that's neutral, right? It's either adding value or it's not.
Yeah.
And so, obviously some things are much more detrimental. But when it comes to like, what am I thinking about right now? What am I paying attention to? What am I putting my energy into right now that's giving my attention? It's either something that's good for you, or it's something that's preventing you from being better. And I'm not like super crazy strict when it comes to, not, allowing myself to, have frivolity in my life. I could use some more structure, as my wife will tell you, but If we can be conscious of it, right? We want to be conscious of the decisions that we make, right? That's what conscious competence is.
Yeah.
Conscious competence is I understand why things go well because I'm conscious of my competence. I also want to be conscious of my incompetence. I want to be conscious of the things that aren't good for me or that I don't do well so that I can consciously not do them or make that or bring competence to them. The dangerous things, unconscious competence is great, but it's not making us better because we're not conscious of why we do things well. And the really dangerous one is unconscious incompetence, which is I don't even know what I don't know, and I'm probably doing a lot of things wrong or that aren't good for me, and I don't know that they're not good for me because I'm unconscious of it.
Yeah.
And so Eckhart Tolle, one of my favorite quotes from Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now and A New Earth. And so many of us are like, I'm not good at meditating, or like I always get distracted. And it's like, stop beating yourself up for being human, right? Like the goal is to not get distracted. The goal is to notice when you're distracted so that you can come back to what's good for you, which is the present moment, and knowing what's in the present moment. So he says, which I love, when you notice that when you notice you're distracted, you're no longer distracted.
Oh, I love that.
Right? So
Yes.
it's the power. The power is in the noticing.
Right.
It's not about being perfect. It's about how quickly, and when I'm working with athletes, I'm like, will you stop trying to go out there and thinking that you're going to be focused for 90 minutes or focused for 9 innings or focused for 60 minutes? You're not. No one is. And how quickly can you notice when you are distracted and then know what to refocus on that's going to go back to your performance? That's the game. So the game within the game is how quickly can you notice you're distracted because you're no longer distracted.
So good. So good. I'm telling you, this hour flew by, but I don't want it to end without mentioning a couple of things. You mentioned Limitless Minds. There's a program at Limitless Minds for leaders looking to level up. Where can people find more about that program? I saw that on your social media.
Yeah, I think it's actually a program that I've kind of co-created with Limitless Minds.
Is that with Joanna Lohman?
With Joe Lohman, yes, the legend Joe Lohman.
We need your help getting Joe on the show. By the way, Travis.
What do you? I'll drop
just
her a text.
You make the call or the text, whatever it takes. Because
I will be very disappointed.
We're big fans.
If she turns it down.
There you go. We're gonna put that on tape.
I will be texting her.
Recorded.
Yes.
So as you're listening to this, if I didn't deliver Joe,
that's right.
I failed miserably. Right. So Joe and I have co-created the program for Limitless Minds. We both already are coaches and presenters for Limitless Minds.
Yeah.
And so obviously the clients that we work with recognize the void in leadership training because Limitless Minds is all about mindset training. And so noticing the void in leadership training. And so Joe and I have been putting together this great program. And so, limitlessminds.com, or if anyone reaches out to me directly, obviously I can help lead them in the right direction.
That's awesome. And then lastly, and then we'll let you go, is the Yes and Mindset and Leadership virtual program begins June 6th. And guys, let me tell you something. And I can tell you one Knox Allen will be a participant at this particular virtual training. Yes. That's Brandon's son. But spots are still available for all high school and college athletes. And you go to @LiveYesAnd on Instagram. And there's a link in the bio, I believe, for that one. So definitely want to take advantage of that opportunity because I'm telling you, all of the information you just heard today is just the tip of the iceberg. Speaking of, could go on and on and on. Like I was telling you earlier about some of the stories that we hear on here and just being able to go forever. We could definitely talk to you for another 2 or 3 hours, but we know you have things to do. But we can't thank you enough for joining us. It has definitely been a pleasure. There was a lot of good stuff that you unpacked there. For the listeners, make sure you go and get that book, The Words for Getting Unstuck, 3 words for getting unstuck, Live, Yes, and Travis, thank you. We really appreciate it, guys. Being on.
Hey, I just made everything up. None of this stuff.
It was all an improv exercise.
I just got to improvise for an hour, right? I have no idea what I said, right? I don't.
It's like
my name's not even Travis Thomas,
That's right?
So no, guys, no, I appreciate it. I really enjoy having conversations like this. So this is great, and would love to come back on at another time, and we can dive into some other topics as well. But this was a great. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. I guess I got to call Joe now.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. You have your homework. Thanks, Travis. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Travis. You were awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.